Ian Schiller, International Consultant Bureau. I am the International Consultant. Check me out at ianscheller.com. Click on the top in the navigation for the International Consultant Bureau, where you could click through and order web services. Reserve the time of the International Consultant, or listen to these, the Web Basic Podcast. This is episode 6, and today we're going to talk about what a designer does. Now, if you've got all your web materials together and you decide you want to get something designed, right? You don't have a relative or a cousin, or a relative, I guess that is a cousin. You don't have a cousin or a little grandson or a recent college grad who's going to put something together for you. You're going to hire a designer. Now, I could probably say hiring a professional designer, if you have the budget, is worth your time. And it's worth your time for several reasons. Number one, if you hire one that's decent, they probably have a lot of experience with the web. They're going to give you the straight and narrow as far as what's acceptable and what's not, as far as specifications and just helping you get your money's worth. Now, you got to do your diligence, though, on these people. Sometimes, and I've heard, bad stories sometimes about people will order someone and they haven't seen any references or emailed any references or seen the portfolio. You've got to do all that. You've got to, designers come in all kind of shapes and sizes and styles, and, some designers will specialize in certain areas, and you would probably want to pick one that's close to what you like and go with someone that, appeals to your senses and is also going to give you good service. And you do that by just reading up on them, and if they have a little bit of information or some testimonials, that's a great way to just check up on them. And usually right off the bat, without getting started, do not give them any money until you've got some sort of agreement with them. And bottom line, from a designer, they're going to deliver to you designs of your website, and you're going to agree on that in a document up front before money's exchanged. Some designers do require a deposit. That's not unusual. Some it's a third, some it's a half. And you can negotiate and talk about that. And you want to get a loose time frame about how everything's going to happen. If you come into a project sometimes, most of the time with a designer or even developers, which we'll talk about, usually you can expect to pay more up front if you're imposing a quicker turnaround than usual. Usually you got to let the designer tell you, based on their schedule, when you can have it, and hopefully it meets up. So again, you're paying for their service to give you the best service when it comes to web design in this case. And you want to just get all the questions out of the way up front so that when you're designing, you're not halfway through and you realize, oh, I'm not getting all these files delivered to me. Or, if you want the working files, see, most designers design in Photoshop. And what they'll do is they'll hold on to the working files, which means the working files, meaning they can manipulate the text and all sorts of stuff. And they will send you an optimized image, like a JPEG, sometimes a PNG or a GIF, or they'll have a client space where you can log in and look at your work that they've been doing. They might just send you that. Some people want to buy the working files, and there might be an additional charge on that depending on who you're working with, because once you have the working files, you could take those files and archive them, or you could, have them for later dates if you want to update them yourself or take them to another designer. I would suggest getting the working files, which might be a little bit more, but in the long run, you'll have a fully archived, backed up design version of your site. And this is just design. So what you're getting, you're not going to get something that you'll be able to click on and click through, although some designers will do stuff like that. You're just going to get a graphical representation of what your site was spec'd out to be based on the ramifications and based on the data that you've given the designer. Now, the more data you give that designer, the better. And they're going to pick stuff that's visually more compelling for the web than not. So don't hesitate to give them more than enough. Now, if you don't have everything that's ready to go, such as photographs, if they're not scanned, there's going to be additional charges for that probably, just because it's more work to get that flyer or photo. You got to get it digital so the designer can work on it. So once you're into the design process, you might have the tendency to want to email and contact your designer at every working moment of the day. But quite frankly, that's a great way to burn out and sour your designer on you if you're being needy and you have questions. A good thing to do is wait till a designer presents you with a first round of compositions and make a list and take time looking at your design. Obviously, if you have questions, you pose those to the designer to get an answer, to talk through what you're seeing. If you don't like something, you've got to be specific about it. If you're wishy-washy on something, that's fine, you can be, but you've got to be specific about it. We talked about this briefly in the last podcast. If you just say, well, I don't like blue, change the color. The designer can say, okay, he'll change it, or she'll change it. But what are they supposed to change it to? Now, a lot of designers, it's not uncommon that they will take what you have in your branding, what exists in your logo, and they will use that on the site. Smart designers do that because your branding is your colors and your colors is your branding, and vice versa. If you start driving your designer off of that brand, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot, and it brings you back around to question why you're actually using that logo if you don't like the colors and design of it. That's why in the very beginning, we made sure that you're going to get a good logo design for your business, because that's where it's going to come in now. So if you get to this point where you're hiring a designer and you're not confident in your logo, get that designer. Hopefully you have enough money in your budget. Get that designer to get you a logo first, and then move on to the website. So again, being specific about the changes is key, because it's going to move you through that web process quicker and get you to the end quicker. Now, again, if you don't know about something, or you're unsure about something, ask the designer. And preferably, from what I know, is designers love email, because they could answer your questions. You don't have to talk about it. Most designers and web people do not like to talk ad nauseum on the phone about your lack of understanding of the craft. Now, it makes sense that you would not understand certain things about the web, but you have to understand, when you're paying a professional to build you something, they're building it because they're professional and because you've done your homework and researching, you're working with the right person. If you're not working with the right designer, you'll probably find out one way or another. If they don't get back to you within 24 hours, most designers will get back to you within 24 hours, at least giving you an update of some sort. If you're not getting what you want out of that person, then you might consider moving on. Which can be a tricky thing, but you want to save everything that you've worked on, and you want to save emails and all that kind of stuff too, because you're entering with in a working relationship with these people. So, to sum it up, get all the questions you think get all the questions that you have questions about. Get them taken care of up front. Get a simple contract with your designer. Know what the deadline is going to be, and be specific when you want changes. And if you're not able to be specific, ask the designer to help you get to be specific, because they can kind of guide you and ask you certain questions about what it is you do or you don't like. Saying things like, it's just not working, or it doesn't look right. Those kind of things are fine, but there's actually something specific behind that, and then you get into a different vocabulary that not everyone has, and you're not required to have that, but you are required to be honest, and don't worry about hurting the designer's feelings. I mean, if you come out and say, hey, this looks like a piece of you-know-what, that's one thing. But if you say, hey, this looks great, but what do you think about doing this? And what do you think about doing that? And they're going to tell you. And keep in mind, again, whatever's in your contract's in your contract, but usually the more changes, the more the budget will go up. Usually after 2 or 3 changes, you'll go through 2 or 3 rounds, meaning the designer will provide you with one round. You'll revise that and maybe revise it again. And usually by that time, you've got something that will make sense. So go out there, find yourself a good designer. If you need help doing that, of course you can contact me at the International Consultant Bureau, available through ianscheller.com, the internationalconsultantbureau.com. This is Ian Scheller. Next time, we're going to talk about what the developer does and how you could work with them, very similar to the designer, except they code and program your website. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.